That's right. Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And PerGron.
And book a ticket, because we're all going to the World's Fair.
Hell yeah, we're on our way.
But not the World's Fair you're thinking of, kids. This is a very different kind of World's Fair.
Yeah, no, it's a small world to this one.
Oh my god, could you imagine? I'm actually kind of surprised that they didn't work in some sort of I don't know, creepy doll metaphor into this. But anyways, folks, we are talking about a 2021/2022, depending on if you look at the festival release date or the HBO Max release date. That shit drives me crazy when it comes to ranking stuff. But a little indie film that could, known as "We're All Going to the World's Fair," and I got to tell you, Paragon, this is even I really should have ranked it in my 2022 rankings. But like I said, it's just it's one of those things. It's just the ambiguity of well, it was playing in the festival circuit in 2022, or 2021. But yeah, this thing, the more I look into it, the more it's kind of hitting me. Just there's a lot of things that I want to go over with this. But first of all, we should just kind of I very much feel like this is absolutely the first time that in a major way the vibes and the lore of the creepy pasta culture and that whole kind of rabbit hole have been captured on film in a really meaningful way. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, other than I can't think of too many other than I guess if you count that Slender Man movie.
I do not count that garbage.
20,
That's what I'm talking about in a meaningful way.
Well, that was meaningful to make it so nobody wants to make a CreepyPasta movie.
Paragon, you know what we need?
What's that?
We need 1999.
Yeah.
We the movie that if this were seriously get this director on a 1999 movie. Oh my god. Anyways, Paragon, why don't you give the folks a synopsis of this movie? I'm gonna put you on the spot here.
Okay, yeah. So it's been a little while. I watched it back in October. I
It's been a
think was the last time
while.
I watched it right when it came out, but there's not a lot of plot to get into anyway. It's basically just a young girl on the internet. She's kind of a loner, doesn't seem to have any friends, has not their dad, I guess. And she starts live streaming and gets into the culture of this creepypasta that's the World's Fair. And she does a quick little blood sacrifice, like you do, and then she watches 3 minutes of uninterrupted blinking lights. Says we're all going to the or I want to go to the World's Fair. I think 3 times,
Mm-hmm.
and then goes. Then that's it. But you're supposed to see really weird shit happening to you. Sorry to swear in the first 5 minutes. But
we're not monetized here.
But yeah, so then you're just supposed to see weird stuff happen to you and document it, and she starts to have really weird shit happen to her, and she documents it, and that's kind of what it's sold to you as, but it's more complex than that.
Oh, way more complex than that. Yeah. My big selling point of this movie is that there is okay, I don't know. This is going to be a take. I feel is there a debate on if there's any supernatural stuff going on? Because my read is a definitive no.
I've definitely seen people that have the interpretation that there is a little bit, but I also read it as absolutely not. This is very much a grounded movie.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I really feel is fascinating. So the title of this podcast is The Haunting Loneliness of We're All Going to the World's Fair and Creepypasta Culture. And so basically my goal for this is we're going to talk through the movie, but I also want to kind of relate some of our personal experiences because we're both huge creepypasta dorks. I feel like we're about 10 years removed from each other as far as age goes. So it's interesting that like I was coming into creepypasta kind of like as a college kid, and I assume you were more of like, like an actual like I assume that was like what, like middle school for
Yeah,
you
I
when
think I think
creepypasta
when
was really popular.
I think when I first discovered it was like sixth grade, seventh
Uh-huh.
grade.
Uh-huh. So we're a little bit like generationally, like I feel like that's an interesting mix because I actually went through the kind of internet culture that the director, who I'm going to go ahead and shout out now. I'm a bit paranoid on if I'm saying her last name right, but Jane Schonbrunn, uh, she actually grew up, in my sort of, and this is where I want to spin it off. I want to have a conversation on your side of things,
Yeah.
the kids who grew up with creepypasta, and then my side of things where I grew up in like, the analog era of the internet, right? Like I grew up on the message boards. Like YouTube was a big thing for me back then, when that first came over. Like I literally have lived through the evolution of the internet and fandom spaces, from just being like all like a million different message boards, all sorts of different little fan communities, to it being by and large conglomerated into like 5 social network sites. Like really, PerGron, WDW Magic, it honest to God is one of the most active, not just in the Disney community, but just in general, one of the most active message boards that I know of right now, just at least from a fandom space.
Mm.
But so yeah, I definitely came into this. We're going to try to explore both sides and explore the film at the same time. It's going to be a fun little juggling act, just like the film itself is a fun little juggling act. So with that in mind, let's see. Do you want to give like a quick kind of your opinion on the movie just as a whole, really quick
Yeah.
elevator? Like, I know you've already summarized the plot. I know I'm going in a million directions. We're trying to keep this on track here. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Yeah. So coming out of 22, I had this in my number one spot.
Mhm.
It really resonated with me. I really enjoyed it. And I think on a technical level, it still remains as, in my opinion, the best movie I saw in 2022 for me. Um, in rewatchability, I don't think it has as much. So it's kind of dropped a little bit in my like official letterboxd ranking.
Mhm.
But it's still in the top 10. I think I have it at like number 8 right now, just as like it really, really resonated with me. It was a movie that I definitely think people should watch, especially if you had like an internet upbringing.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
and it's a movie that like I really, really, really enjoyed. I didn't expect to enjoy it in the first like 10 minutes. I kind of just watched it because it's like, oh, it's on HBO Max. I want to hit as many movies as I can. It's kind of short. It's like what, 90 minutes.
An
Oh
hour 25 in and out.
yeah. So it's a really short watch, and I was like, oh, I'll just put this on before work one day, and it really did resonate with me. I really enjoyed a lot of it.
I love experiences with movies like that. Like I watched Punch Drunk Love for the first time, like in senior year of high school, like on a whim, the like in the morning before I had to go to school, and it just like knocked my ass off. I love experiences like that. They're some of the most memorable movie watching experiences for me when you're not really expecting it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Um, so yeah, I too, I was actually kind of just looking through. I do my kind of like year end rankings, and once again, just the ambiguity of like it's technically a 2021 movie. I hate it. It's literally a problem. It's an OCD for me. It's always an issue. But I am very glad that I caught this on some people's top 10 lists because and let's spin out into the broader conversation. Yeah, so I grew up in an era where it was less like creepypasta obviously wasn't even a thing that was really invented until like the 2010s. So I grew up in this era where it was like a weird sort of like there was like an even darker kind of underbelly to the internet, right? Where um there was and I want to feel I want to say like a lot of this film feels more like that darker sort of like analog internet kind of phase through a creepypasta lens.
Mhm.
And I don't even I like it I grew up in it. And so one of the things that that the director was talking about in one of her Q&As that I honestly really hit hard for me. And this is like, I literally just watched this Q&A like about a half hour ago, is how she was talking about kind of the ambiguity of, like these weird sort of like very, very, very close relationships that you form with people online. And yet a lot of things like you just don't know,
Right.
I'm going to call out one person right now. If they're watching, that's totally fine. But Snoopy, do you remember Snoopy from So You Want to Be an Imagineer? He won season 10. I don't know if you remember him or not.
I've heard the name. I'm familiar with the legacy more than the name.
Right. So he is like easily like my oldest online friend. And we went through a lot together. Like we were like, it was me and him in the thick of all of this together. Like, we had a million different roller coaster tycoon message boards that we would frequent and stuff like that. We went through a lot. And I have never even seen a picture of this man. And that really kind of like, I don't want to call him out because, like Blue Dragon 5, he also is a very private person, and I respect that about him, and he doesn't want to show his face on camera either. But it's just, it did hit me hard where it's like there was a period of time where I had like no friends in the, and this is just kind of going to the loneliness of it all, right? Like I really struggled in late middle school, early high school, that kind of era. And then also post college, I was really struggling to just keep and maintain friendships. And so the people online, and even a lot of times, like, depending on the availability of my real friend group, which is very limited in the real world, a lot of times these people online become very much my actual like found family in a lot of ways. Now, nowadays, with the advent of YouTube, the infamous Tiki's friend tier list of it all, and like meeting up in person and everything. Like it feels like a lot more open, right? Like because most of the people that I consider actual friends with, not just online acquaintances, but friends, are people that I've collaborated with, met up with in the real world, stuff like that, but also just, like I honestly consider everyone in the WDW Magic space, like you, Ace, that kind of like tier of people. You're all not top tier friends of mine because I've not met up with you in the real world, but you are friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we have done stuff together. We have collaborated. So, but yeah, back then it was just not like that. And even like there was definitely like a stranger danger vibe, of course, when I was growing up, where I did not want to show my face on a webcam. And so I very rarely even got into video calls or voice calls. Like even to this day, it's a weird phenomenon with me that my family will even talk about, where I am shit over the phone and I am shit when it comes to just freeform socializing over the phone. Like I'm much better at that in person.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I can do podcasts great, but the reason for that is that, like if I'm talking podcasts and, there's like a prompt there. And like, for example, you and I were just going to come on and talk about the movie. And I was like, there's a broader topic we could be covering here with the movie. And I kind of want to more sort of, like I said, use the movie as a jumping off point for these broader themes.
Right.
But I'm sorry, I'm going off on a whole tangent here.
Oh no,
my point is there's people like Snoopy who, at one point in my life, like I considered him my closest friend, and nowadays I'm like, shit, if the dude was like, a 40-year-old man in his mother's basement that whole time, I would have never known. You know what I mean? He posed himself as like being just like in my same grade and everything, but I don't fucking know.
Right.
I don't. It really is kind of that ambiguous sort of like. Now Snoopy, again, if you do happen to be watching this, I don't know. I just don't know. You know what I mean, PerGron? It's
oh yeah, absolutely.
There's always this one figure or multiple figures, and I grew up in a non-social media age. Like, I mean, people had MySpace back then, but MySpace was an entirely different climate. MySpace was more about your own personal profile and less about reaching out to other people, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, PerGron, I'm gonna kind of pass the buck to you. What is like growing up in the creepypasta era? Kind of like, how do you relate to this movie? Like, were you also someone that looked to the online space to kind of fill gaps in your real social life?
Yeah, so I kind of my time was post like AOL chat rooms. I remember my
Mm.
my older cousins being on them.
I had actually a couple like really actually a good example. You probably remember this. Do you remember the season 3 judge? You've probably heard stories about this.
I've definitely heard stories.
Yeah, that is actually a perfect example. Okay, this motherfucker, he knew I was like a teenager, right?
Hmm.
And he was telling me all this drama about like him and his relationship and interpersonal issues. I'm like, bro, calm down. And looking at it now, like that dude, that person was absolutely unhinged,
Hmm.
like just totally unhinged. And the fact that he was like, he had a personal vendetta against Sergey, I don't know. It's there's like Snoopy is a type of person where I'm kind of guessing it was more of like a privacy sort of thing. He was probably as skeptical of me as I was of him
Hmm.
in that sense. But I would very much kind of trust him if he were to reappear and be like, yo, I want to be on the podcast. I'd be like, all right, man, let's set it up. You and I have a long history together. Man, if me and him could have a conversation, that'd be a really fascinating conversation.
I
But
feel like I'll be in the comments for that one.
there's there's other figures like that judge, for example, where it is super duper shady. I like in a couple that I'm kind of like that are sort of like in the back recesses of my mind of, shadier interactions. So, and that is very much kind of the germ that this movie picks at. Anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off from
Oh,
horse.
you're good. You're good.
All right.
Yeah, we're all having fun here. Yeah, so I kind of grew up post that. Like I remember my older cousin having like going on AOL chat rooms like when she would
Mhm.
babysit us. She'd pop on a movie and she'd like go log on and stuff. So I was aware of that sort of thing, but I didn't really get onto the internet and probably until like actively I was 12, so 2011, when I got my first YouTube channel. So that was kind of my first
Oh my
exploration
God.
into the internet.
That's another thing that trips me out, man. I was in my 20s when I started my YouTube channel. And now there's like it's almost like having a YouTube channel these days is almost as basic as having a Facebook page. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Go ahead though.
You're gonna laugh. It was mine and my cousin. That's actually where we got the name PerGron from.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah,
nice,
so it
nice.
was the two of us, an amalgamation of our names.
By the
So
way, are you named after Colby Donaldson?
I'm not. I'm actually named after Colby.
Really?
I'm actually named after Colby Jack Cheese. I'm not even shitting you.
That's crazy. Okay.
Um, but yeah, so we made that channel, and it was mainly us recording Zoo Tycoon 2 videos.
Oh God.
Because there was
I love it. I love it.
I, I imagine you weren't involved in this side of YouTube, but there was a really small niche side of YouTube that would focus on like Zoo Tycoon 2 videos. You would mod it and stuff, and then
Uh-huh.
they would build these zoos, but it wouldn't be like touring my zoo. It would be like they'd tell a story, and it was effectively my first introduction to creepypastas. So there would be you would go in and it would be text showing up almost like a silent movie.
Oh
It
my
would show a
God.
clip and then there would be text and there was no voiceover or anything, but there would just be really creepy music. And you would follow a main protagonist as you walk through this little Zoo Tycoon 2 world, and they told a story, and usually it was using like creepy monsters that were modded animals and
That's
everything.
great.
Um People modded like blood and stuff into the game, and it would create these really creepy stories that would continue over like entire sagas. Like there would be playlists of like 40 videos set in
Oh
this
my
world
God.
telling this story. And even though it was obviously like fictional because it's in Zoo Tycoon, it kind of branched off from there. That's kind of where I got into it. Was
So I want to bring up one point that the director did talk over where she brought up like one of the things that really brought me back to what we're doing. And so you want to be an Imagineer in games like Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Mhm.
The whole idea of like the long form storytelling and bringing people from the actual community into the story, right? Which
Right.
has basically become like the selling point of the Sorcerer's Apprentice as a game.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no. But yeah, that so I remember my cousin and I we started making videos and stuff like that. We weren't very good, obviously. We were 12-year-olds. We didn't have any actual like recording, so we recorded it on a cell phone of our screen. And we also weren't allowed to download mods because our parents didn't trust those. So we had to use like actual animals. So they were very, very terrible videos. Um, but we kind of got into, I started like in the comment section, like other more prominent Zoo Tycoon um, video makers came into the comment section and were like, hey, this is a great first effort. It was actually a really supportive community, weird enough. But they'd come into the comment section and they'd be like, hey, great effort. This was really good. I'm excited to see what you do. And we kind of got jumping back and forth between them. And these people were probably like much older, right? Like
Right.
these, and we'd never see their face, never hear their voice, kind of like you were talking with Snoopy. I have no idea who these people are. I don't know if they're still alive. I don't know if they're
Yeah, no, there's definitely like there's people like in the recesses of my brain, like just all these different screen names,
Mhm.
people that like for periods of time in my life I would think of as very close friends, but now I can barely even remember the screen name. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure none of these channels still exist. I think one of them does. I think one of them.
uh-huh.
But like these videos would be, and these people, I remember one of them linking something in our comment section, and my cousin, being the idiot that he is, clicked on the link without checking it or anything. And it brought us to just a static video.
Oh no. Oh
And
no.
it was just like blinking screens and like fuzz. And all of a
Uh-huh.
sudden, like I think it was Jeff the Killer. I think it was that one. And he like jumped out at you and screamed, and it was like the most terrifying thing we had ever experienced. But that was kind of, I remember that moment very vividly. Is the first moment that I kind of got into this sort of like, I've always liked horror. I've always been a horror guy.
Right.
Um, I've always liked scary stuff. So even though that terrified me to no end, it kind of got my curiosity up, and we started like branching off, finding like chats and stuff that people would post these things in. And I was never like, in this movie you see this girl who is really lonely, and like you were talking about, kind of filled the void. I was never really like that, in that
Mhm.
I never really, I didn't believe in any of this stuff. None of this stuff like really, it captured my attention because I really liked the storytelling element of it.
Sure,
And so
sure.
it would actually be something that I bring into my real life, and my friends and I would get together and we'd actually write them and stuff. Never posted anything. But I'm sure somewhere I have like a notebook deep in a
Oh
closet
my
somewhere
god,
full of
yeah.
my own creepy pastas.
Okay, so let's kind of go back to the film a little bit
Yeah.
because one of the things that the film, like I said, does kind of touch on is this whole idea of these, these really, really ambiguous relationships, and that's one of the things we were touching on. And so I don't know, what do you like? What do you make of the dynamic that is going on in the film itself?
Yeah. So
Do you think it is predatory? Because I think that's one of like I don't even necessarily think there's a good answer for that one way or another, honestly.
yeah, so I think we're getting into some light spoilers. Just spoiler warning for anyone who wants to watch the movie and hasn't watched it. Um, but I don't think so, in the way that I don't think that the um, character in the movie was actively trying to get anything out of this girl. What
I don't think sexually at all. I
Yeah.
agree on that end, but I do think that there is very much like an issue of exploitation and
Oh,
taking
yeah.
advantage of someone who's in a very vulnerable state.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think like the character was very creepy. Like just throughout the whole thing,
Mhm.
I didn't trust him, and the fact that he
I'm just going to
uses,
be honest with you. He was creepy because I honestly felt called out. And you know why?
why is that?
Because think about it. I am a 32-year-old man. And so you
Hmm.
want to be an Imagineer has kind of been my creative pride and joy. And the
Right.
thing I pride myself on is the fact that I do look at the game truly as a beacon for, for people. Like, obviously, a lot of people, like, I feel like college kids are probably like the main demographic of people that actually do well in the game. But
Hmm.
I also do pride myself on the fact that, like, kids who might be feeling a little bit socially isolated, or might not have an area in their actual social life to express this kind of creativity, that, I pride myself on giving people that area. But of
Yeah,
course,
absolutely.
I would not be surprised at all if someone were to look at that in a vacuum and be like, oh, he's providing children with this space, and they're vulnerable people, and you know what I mean? It's like, I
Yeah.
truly did feel like, oh my god, like, obviously, like, the idea of that has never even crossed, like, of course, I started So You Want to Be an Imagineer as a teenager. It's literally grown with me. Like, we're on
Hmm.
our 20th season now, so there is that sort of element of it. God, it's such a head trip.
I can definitely see that because there's definitely kids in our community,
Oh,
um,
absolutely.
and they get put in private chats with all of us who are over 18 at minimum, which which
Like I
can
said, I feel like by the time we get to merges on So
yeah,
You Want to Be an Imagineer, it's like college people.
right.
And if there is a kid in the cast who has made the merge, then that is a very talented kid, and he's probably very bright. You know what I
Right.
mean?
But there's definitely I remember in 1986, Mickey
Oh
Nerd.
God, yeah.
He was like 16.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
So that's definitely, and he made it pretty far. I think we eliminated him right before or in the second gate. Like he was top 6, I think.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
and he was like a 16-year-old kid, and knowing that, and I don't want to call out any individuals, but I don't know if you remember any individuals that were acting very inappropriate throughout the game towards Mickey Nerd. Um,
Hmm.
because
That's actually interesting, because I don't necessarily remember, like.
I remember one player, and
Ooh.
I think we discussed it in we had a alliance thread that Ace had set up.
Okay. Can you just write down the name of the player and the price? I understand not
Yeah,
wanting to call him out, but just so I
yeah,
have
I don't.
context.
Yeah, I definitely
This is
don't want.
really this is juicy, because I kind of vaguely remember this, but like, oh, right, yeah,
Yeah, there
okay.
were definitely some really, really inappropriate comments made. Not, I don't think
And honestly, that person himself is very much
yeah,
an outlier of the community, I will say.
right. And I don't want to say that anything malicious, but
Of
it
course,
kind
yeah.
it kind of gave me the vibes in this movie. Like it made me think of that watching this, because that is an older person um who clearly in this movie, that's an older person who's part of this internet community, and kind of unknowingly but also knowingly, he knows she's young, but
Hmm.
also thinks she's just kind of playing along. um and it gave me those vibes. Not that it makes it okay on either side, but just things like that made me think of that, and how very dangerous these internet interactions can be for someone underage, for someone developmentally behind, someone who's not quite sure that oh, this is a game. um and there's players in other games that I think take things too seriously, and it can really easily start, I think, spiraling um when you have an internet connection with these strangers who you
Hmm.
consider your friends, and who you kind of give information to, but in the end they end up eliminating you from the game, and then you get really upset. um and that's just a mild version of what can happen, obviously, but it kind of gave, I was definitely thinking about this community, because this is kind of the only internet community I'm really part of. It's WDW Magic, and then I spend a little time on Zoo Chat because that's on brand. um, but I'm not really part of too many other internet communities. Most of my life is just with the small group of friends that I have in real
Hmm.
life. So it's definitely something that I thought about this, and I don't think we have any inherently predatory people in our community. I think we have a pretty.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
think overall we have a pretty wholesome and good community. Fair,
Right,
fair.
right.
But yeah, for the most part, I definitely think we have a pretty good community. But even just like slight things can be misstrewn, and I think this movie is a good example because what this character does is very manic. It's very kind of exaggerated to a point, but it's also stuff that I can see a real person going through social anxiety, through
Mhm.
um
I absolutely related, like on a very deep level. I feel like this movie is a head trip for me because I can relate very deeply to both of the main characters.
mhm.
And and it's kind of terrifying in that way for me. It's almost like an existential crisis of a movie.
Right. And I definitely think that's what the movie does well because I also, I mean, I agree. Because this movie is definitely set in more of an analog or has the experiences of an analog time, but it also has experiences that I kind of grew up with.
Mhm, mhm.
I remember,
I love that it's a good mix of the two. I really
yeah,
feel like they got it like kind of flawlessly down. It's a great kind of cocktail of those two eras.
yeah, because like I remember I had a Minecraft server. My friends and
Oh yeah, Minecraft was
I.
that was definitely kind of. I mean, I feel like if I was a little bit younger, I would have been way down that rabbit hole.
Right.
I
Yeah.
avoided it. Like Roller Coaster Tycoon, by all intents and purposes, was my Minecraft.
Hmm.
But I mean, Roller Coaster Tycoon, it definitely had an interesting kind of vibe, like much like the Zoo Tycoon community. You know, there were
Right.
veterans who were clearly like college kids, and then there were people like me who were basically literal children,
Right.
and kind of this odd subset of kids with too much time on their hands and adults who didn't have actual social lives.
Right. Yeah.
uh, Go
I
ahead.
remember my friends and I, we had a Minecraft server and we paid for it. This was, I think, freshman year of high school.
Uh-huh.
So we had just gotten, like, we all had jobs now. And we're like, we want to save up and do a Minecraft server. And one of my friends that I knew had invited some people he had met on a different server.
Mm.
Um, and I was fine playing with them on the server, like whatever, we're just interacting. But then they wanted to get in a Skype call because my friends and I would Skype call as we're playing on the server, and we invited these people because my friend wanted to invite them on. And I remember thinking these could be like some really creepy old guys or
Right.
whatever trying to creep, and like we're 14, so like this is a little unnerving. And then we
You
got
know
on,
what? I'm
and
not going to lie to you. I have like existential dread every fucking time without fail that someone comes onto the podcast that I've not heard their voice before.
I
Every fucking time. Like
I can
once I hear
definitely
their
see that.
voice, it's almost automatically like, oh, okay. But before that, it's like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Like, what if they're just incoherent? What if they're like obviously just very old? You know what I mean?
Right. And I can definitely see that. But I remember picking up the phone, picking up Skype, because Skype's
Uh-huh.
the big part of this movie. I
Oh
remember
yeah,
picking
oh
up
yeah,
Skype
for
and
sure.
thinking these are going to be like some old guys and they're going to be really creepy. And they were actual 7-year-old children.
Oh my god.
And I switched, and
I love it. I love it.
I'm only 14 at this point.
Right.
But I switched from being the kid who's like, oh my god, these are going to be like creepy older people, to
Dude,
being a
I'm the
creepy
creepy
older
older
person. And
person.
like it was a 7-year-old kid, a 9-year-old kid, and I think a 11-year-old kid, I think, was the oldest. And I really went from being the oh my god, I'm going to be the one being preyed on, to oh my
Uh-huh.
god, I'm the creepy old one. And I remember one time getting into a spat with my friend over Skype because he had like nuked all of our stuff or whatever, and being really really mad at him. And one of those little kids didn't
Uh-huh.
have his headset in, and the mom heard these older kids yelling
Oh
through the
shit.
computer,
Oh
and
no.
the mom coming onto the Skype and being like, who are you, who is this, I want names.
Oh god.
And my friends and I all hanging up because we're like, what the fuck, what are we gonna do?
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
never talking to, we all blocked this kid on Skype,
Oh.
which definitely didn't bode well for like this mom thinking like, who are these people?
Right.
That definitely wasn't a good look, but we're like, what do we do? Like, I'm not going to give my information to this woman, but like, also, we probably shouldn't be playing with this like 9-year-old kid on Skype.
Yeah,
So,
there's been maybe like two times in my entire podcasting career where people have been like, "Oh, I really want to come on. I really want to come on." In the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't know. And then I let them on, and it's like a fucking train wreck. You know what I mean? Like,
I watched one of those today. One of your I was
did you
recap
really?
I was recapping the old Sorcerer's Apprentices that I've been in because I like an ego
Uh
trip
huh.
every once in a while. And I watched one that we had a guest that was same guest I actually messaged you about earlier.
Oh yeah, yeah. And you know what's weird is that he actually was not the worst one.
Oh my god.
Like he was bad. He was bad.
Mhm.
But there's been a couple others. Like at least he was self aware about what he was doing. Like he was basically trolling, right?
Mhm.
There were a couple people where it was like they just like I don't want to be mean about it, but you could tell that just developmentally they just weren't quite there,
Right.
and they didn't really know how to properly communicate with people. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yep.
And I don't. It is this weird space. Like I say over and over and over again, PerGron, with my YouTube thing. This is a hobby. It is not a career, and I do not want my channel to get too big. I
Right.
really fucking don't. Like 1,000 subscribers, like honestly 10,000 I feel like is a nice, like if I hit 10,000 and then never gain one more subscriber after that, that's like a nice ceiling for me. But anyways, we should probably focus this. Like I said, I'm trying to kind of juggle our personal experiences with this movie,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I feel like we're doing a really good job so far. Honestly, I'm
I
really
think so.
digging this conversation.
I would give this an A plus to be completely honest.
So okay, one of the elements of the movie I definitely want to kind of get back to is the whole, like, with the main character going through what she's going through with Casey. I feel like there's definitely an ambiguity. I don't necessarily think the ambiguity is in, like, I'm definitely with you. I don't think there's a paranormal element to it. I don't think there's anything like, actually happening to her. Like, she's not being possessed. I feel like the real ambiguity lies in how much self awareness does she have versus how much of this is a construct of some sort of other mental illness
Right.
that this exercise is triggering within her. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like there's definitely she's got some sort of grief going on. There's no mom in the picture. And the dad seems to be absent at best.
I love how the
Um
movie doesn't spell it out, though. I love how
yeah,
we don't get any sort of like, the most we get is the dad yelling at her to turn it down. But we've all been there. Every single
right.
one of us has had one moment where the parent has yelled at us at 3 a.m. to turn that shit down. You know what
Right.
I mean? So it's not like that. That paints a picture of, like, I get the feeling, like how I personally read it is that the mother did die and now the dad isn't. It's not that he's abusive. It's not even
Right.
that he doesn't care. It's more so I get the, like, there's kind of like a mixture of being withdrawn and also overworked.
Right. Yeah, I definitely
But the
think
movie doesn't spell it out.
no, like it gives you this nice ambiguity where like from her point of view, he's like an absentee father.
Hmm.
And obviously she's juggling with some sort of trauma related to probably missing a mother. I
Hmm.
just there's no mention of a mother, and she does spend a lot of time in a graveyard, so that just kind of makes
Yes,
me
yes. Although,
makes
I mean,
me
that is classic goth girl behavior. Let's
that's
be
true.
honest.
But but I definitely think there was some symbolism there that like inferred
Sure,
that
sure.
like, mom's dead, probably not around. Dad is obviously he's got a lot going on, and she takes that as a lot of kids who are dealing with grief, I imagine, would with a single parent who doesn't have it all together because they lost their partner. They're now single parenting. And that for a kid can definitely be really stressful, obviously. And I've definitely known people. Luckily, I'm very glad to still have my parents, but I had a friend who lost his mom, and
Mhm.
he really got into this stuff, like really got into internet culture
Sure,
as
sure. Yeah.
escapism. Because I remember him. I remember when he lost her, and he kind of left our friend group and spent more time on the internet, and he eventually got into um, some kind of dangerous stuff, and now he's kind of an alt right
Oh,
neo-Nazi.
oh, well,
Um,
that's another like
but
existential dread and terror that, oh my God. Oh.
but like
No,
it.
I'm not. I'm being dead serious,
Oh
dude.
no
I
no.
like in my 20 years of like, and it's almost 20 years to the day. I signed up for my first Disney fan account on New Year's Eve, 2002. So bleeding into 2003.
Hmm.
So it's almost exactly been 20 years to the day that I
Hmm.
have been a part of this fandom, right?
Right.
And so yeah, it's oh man, it's crazy.
Yeah, like but I remember this guy, he really got into some of this dangerous stuff, and it began with just like going on Reddit and becoming part of a community. Um and being like, he'd start by playing role playing games, not necessarily
Yeah.
like in this, where this is a role playing game of horror. He was more of like a um I don't really know what he was into actually. But it definitely spiraled because he had these emotions that he didn't know how to handle with his dad.
Uh-huh.
His dad was not the best dad ever. Um, and now his dad had to deal with three kids, three sons. They were triplets. Um, which is a lot of work, I can imagine. He's in high school. He had just like he's in puberty. He's in high school, freshman year, sophomore year, whatever it was.
Right, right.
And that's dealing with a lot of stuff. And so I definitely saw some of that in this movie too, where like I have experiences with people that I know that kind of entered this manic state a little bit online and kind of believed that these people, everything was honest, and they were your friends. Not saying that you can't have online friends, because obviously I wouldn't be here doing this if we didn't. But like he kind of trusted everybody on here, and they were his friends, and they were helping him through this terrible, terrible time.
Hmm, hmm.
And so I kind of got vibes of that in this movie too.
Oh,
Um,
totally. Sounds very, very much like something like this movie.
yeah, like
Um, let's see. There's two moments in particular that I really want to hit on that I feel like are the most disturbing moments in the movie.
yes,
Uh, One of them is the scene where she's like singing that pop tune, and then there's like the random scream that happens in the middle of
yeah,
it.
that startled me quite a bit.
But I feel like that is contrasting with the other moment that I'm going to bring up, which is pretty much like the kind of the money shot of the film, where that is the moment where I feel like she still basically has all her faculties about her. She's totally sane.
Mhm.
It's very performative. You know what I mean?
Right,
It's startling, but it's performative.
right.
And the other scene that I want to go to, which I really feel like this is the scene of the movie, is the death of Poe.
Hmm.
Because that is where the line just gets fucking blurred. Like I said, not in a paranormal way, but in a way of like, is this girl okay?
Right.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna go out and say the death of Poe, like that. And Poe is just this girl's like little stuffed animal that she has throughout the movie,
Stuffed ring-tailed lemur for those interested.
and it hit me emotionally harder than like most movie deaths that I can think of,
Hmm.
because like the thing has been built up throughout the movie is like basically like her only source of comfort and security, right? Like
Right.
throughout the whole damn movie. And then to see the thing just get viciously torn up like that. I mean, God, it's still almost like I'm almost tearing up right now just talking. I swear to God, it really like it. Oh, it touches the nerve with me. It really does. This whole idea of like this, this like I feel like it's a whole. It's obviously a metaphor for lost innocence,
Hmm.
but I really feel like it's very much just kind of all out there on Front Street of just that metaphor, just in a very visceral kind of display.
Yeah, it was a visceral scene for sure. There was It was hard to sit through for like a stuffed animal. I don't
Uh,
think I cared about a stuffed animal this much since probably like Toy Story 3. So like it was there was definitely like and it there was definitely like some viscerality to it, and it was also very uncomfortable to just
Yeah.
sit through. Like you couldn't tell if this girl has her wits about it anymore.
And like as the movie's going on, I do love how it just gets progressively more and more like that. And I actually don't necessarily think there is a lot of ambiguity because um at the end of the movie, JLB mentions that she did spend time in what I assume is essentially a psych ward, like an assisted care facility.
Hmm.
So I feel like it was most definitely like a mental break.
Oh yeah,
But the question is like, how much of it was she cognitive of, really? You know what I mean? Like, how much of it did she believe in herself? That's what I'm fascinated by.
yeah.
Like, kind of
Um,
like let's talk about, I feel like maybe the last real world thing to get into is one thing that the director kind of like, she doesn't really talk about that much, but I feel like it must have influenced this movie, is the Slender Man phenomenon.
mhm.
Like that must have been a jumping off point, though, that whole event.
Oh, it had to have been.
Uh, and that very much is a case of, clearly those girls were mentally ill, and clearly they believed it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Clearly they believed it. And I don't, it's one of those fascinating things, like, even to this day, like, I don't know. I haven't really kept up with that case. I
Hmm.
honestly wonder if they still believe it. It's one of those haunting things.
Yeah, I remember I actually remember around the time that was happening, my friends and I were part of a film class, and we were writing a Slender Man movie because like
Mhm.
we thought could be done kind of fun as like a found footage thing. So we were writing one, and we were going to go out and film it as part of this class, and we had the full script and everything. And I
Mhm.
remember coming in one day, and my teacher sitting us down and being like, "Hey, so you
Oh,
can't do this movie anymore."
Jesus.
And
Wow.
we
That must
said
have been a harsh conversation.
it was not a fun one because we hadn't heard
Oh,
about it yet.
man.
And I
That must
remember,
have been just like just a blast of cold water on your face. I can just imagine.
oh, it was bad. And I remember
Uh-huh.
people in school, of course, it became like the most talked about thing in the world. Um,
Yeah, I wasn't.
and
I obviously wasn't in school during this. Like, I couldn't imagine. Like, if I was, yeah, I could only imagine how much it would be the
yeah,
talk of the town.
it was all over, like all of the people, and people knew we were making this movie.
Oh,
And so
Jesus.
people started associating my friend and I
Uh-huh.
who were writing this with these instances, and were like, "Do you believe in this stuff? Is that why you were making the movie?" And like we got accused of being like these believers. Um and there were people who like, so I kind of got into following this case and seeing their psychosis is basically what it is.
Hmm. Hmm.
They and um just it was terrifying. We ended up getting an A on just the script. We were not allowed to film the movie. We had to film something.
Okay. Okay. That's a good compromise.
Yeah, we ended up having to film something else. But we ended up getting an A on the script, but we were like, yeah, you can't make this movie. And there were people who wanted us to make the movie so bad because they, from seeing or hearing all of the drama behind all of this, they were like, we want to recreate it. There was like a weird subculture of people who really were interested in and probably believed in this stuff themselves,
Hmm.
which was terrifying. Like that was a really terrifying time to be around. It was probably my second most terrifying experience besides when the clowns were roaming around in 2016 and I saw one.
Wait. Hold on. Hold on. Okay. You got to tell that story, bro. You can't just bring that up and then not tell that
Yeah.
story.
Okay. So I'll go really quick.
Yeah, yeah.
So you obviously do. You assigned us a project about it. But you remember that?
Okay, I was a grown ass man when that shit was going down, PerGron. But
Hmm.
I would walk alone at night a lot.
Hmm.
And even to this day, I'm not kidding you, even to this day, I second get, like, I do not go on night walks anymore because of
Hmm.
that shit. Like that's how much of an effect it had on a grown man like me.
Yeah, so I was at the
It just
time.
kind of put the idea of, like people are going to be out there doing bad shit at night.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It just implanted that in my head.
yeah. So for the first couple days, you know how people like started picking on it, and it like became more people were just going out and doing it because it became this
Uh-huh.
phenomenon.
Uh-huh.
Which obviously exacerbated it. But I remember there were some sightings in the town next to mine, our sister town, and people saying like, "Oh, be careful." Obviously, neighborhood groups freaking out and whatever. But it was homecoming week, and I was student body president at the time, so I was in charge of like organizing after school events and like making sure homecoming week went off without a hitch. And one of the events we had scheduled was a powder puff football game.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a good chunk of the school there at our football field, and we had a bunch of teams, and they were doing like a round robin powder puff tournament. Game ended, everybody was starting to leave, but our football field, it wasn't really a football field, it was actually a track with some goal posts at the end. But the woods were in the back, like we're kind of in a woody area. We're in Maine, so like everywhere's woody. But I remember us cleaning up. We were like sweeping up. There was like 6 of us. It was the staff, one teacher, and then my 5 cabinet members. And we were sweeping up all of the confetti and everything and cleaning up the field. And we saw something dart through the woods,
Oh my god.
like at
Oh,
the edge
I
of
would
the
throw up.
we yeah, something like ran right along the edge of the woods. And I, being the animal person and not the smartest person, start shining my flashlight like coyote,
Oh god.
deer. What are we
Uh-huh.
looking at? And I saw, like, I'm like, let's go see what the fuck this is, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, and I remember it was me and 2 of my friends, um, and we're shining flashlights trying to see what moved, and something ran right in front of it, and it was somebody dressed as a clown.
Oh Christ.
And I was shining it around, and there were like 3 of them. And we reported to the teacher, and luckily the school resource officer was still there. The one time I'm ever going to say thank you for officers. But
Right, right.
luckily he was there, and he told us, he's like, get inside the school right now. They're probably harmless, probably just some pranksters, but we need to be careful. And we ended up all getting into my teacher's car, and she drove us home. Because that was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, quick
So
little tangent, but
no, it's all good. It's all good. The last kind of note I want to end on here,
Mhm.
and honest to God, PerGron, this is like legitimately, I'm not even like kidding. This might be one of my top 10 favorite podcasts I've ever recorded. Just because I really feel like we have kind of really nailed down what this film is going for through our own personal lens. I feel like this is going to be a podcast that kind of like is sort of in my head, like, yeah, that was a good one. But one thing I do want to highlight is I was kind of going off on that change about like 20 years. And what I was kind of getting at with the 20 years thing is in the 20 years that I've been in this fandom space, I have never been more scared, like genuinely scared for the state of just culture and society. And I feel like the internet in some ways is kind of like, it was such a, I almost feel like we're in sort of this, like we created our own monster sort of nightmare scenario right now
Mhm.
with all the, like, I never in my lifetime, it blows my mind. Just in 2022, like I honest to God think that 2022 is like, yeah, the pandemic happened in 2020 and that was shit, but like we as a society almost kind of collectively came together. 2022, what the fuck happened? What the fuck happened? It genuinely blows my mind that people are as outwardly hateful as they are right now.
Mhm.
It like it I don't even really have words for it. I try not to get political on this channel, but and I've always kind of like tried to stay like very vehemently fuck the right now. Very, very, very vehemently. Like I am not Oh man, like if you were to go back to like 2016, I'm willing to bet there was probably some fence sitting on my end. But yeah, fuck.
Hmm.
Uh, and I honestly don't know where we go from here. And it's scary. I have never been like so uncomfortable with the world that I am living in. And this is
Hmm.
coming from someone who's dealt with crippling social anxiety all my life. And I don't know, man. I feel like this movie is kind of like I feel like it's going to be looked back on the same way we look back on other like iconic horror movies that kind of touched on a zeitgeist,
Yeah.
because other movies have tried to explore this sort of phenomenon that we're talking about and kind of this internet rabbit hole that people can get lost in.
Hmm.
But I don't think any movie has succeeded in doing it like this.
No,
And
this
you just
movie to me
go,
encapsulates the internet and what it's like to be on it, from the loneliness to the weird rabbit holes you end up
mhm.
in. Like it, this is the most internet movie that I think has ever existed, and it understands it. It's not just like a this is a Wreck-It Ralph's going to
Right,
eBay.
exactly,
This is like
exactly. Hey
this is
kids, you remember Twitter?
yeah, this is the internet, what it's actually like from somebody who grew up on it. It's
Mhm.
something that like the boomers making movies, nothing wrong with boomers making movies, but like the boomers in charge of making movies, and they try to
Red
encapsulate
letter
what it's
media is just in the corner, like, hey.
I love Red Letter Media, so I'll
Oh
never
my
cite
god,
them.
yeah.
But no, so they're like, when you make an emoji movie, for example,
Oh
that's
god, yeah.
not obviously these movies aren't comparable other than like they're both internet movies. They're both
I feel
exploring.
like the Emoji Movie was just as profound as We're All Going to the World's Fair.
Yes, both of them exemplify exactly. We should do a podcast on that.
Oh my god.
But just real quick, if you don't mind, I wanted
Yeah,
to just talk about something I saw with this movie, and it kind of ties in. I'm not going to get very political. I know that's not your
yeah,
channel.
no, go ahead, it's fine.
Um, but I don't hide my politics. I'm very left leaning. I will never hide that. And anyone who has a problem with that, sorry. But I always have been. And seeing friends go farther to the right has only pushed me farther to the left.
Totally,
Um,
totally.
but being on the internet, I'm very active in like leftist spaces and spaces where I try to pull people back to the center. I don't even need to pull them to where I'm at. I just
Uh-huh.
need to pull them back to where it's rational to be at. And so I'm very aware of like the rabbit holes that people fall into, and not that this movie's about that. It's very much not, but it also very much is.
I
Um,
feel like in a weird way, it's almost kind of like prophetic how much it
yeah,
is about that without ever intentionally trying to be like that.
right.
Like when she was making this movie, there's no way they could have even known about the bananas 2022 bullshit that was going to hit us. You know what I mean?
Right. But like there's also like the alt-right pipeline has existed in various forms for a long time,
Oh, absolutely. But in
and the
2022, it
right,
literally became mainstream, and
right.
that's terrifying to
And I
me.
think that yeah, I think this movie had sort of a prophetic look at that, where it's like it's obviously not about politics, or
Uh
at least
huh.
not openly about politics. I do think every movie has political undertones, of course. But I definitely think like yes, this movie specifically on its face is about um creepypastas and loneliness on the internet. And if you dig a little deeper, it's about kind of predatory interactions between minors and adults on the internet, and like how dangerous that stuff can be. And but I really do think that if you peel a couple layers back, there's definitely some political undertones to it. In that this movie is like this is a rabbit hole that somebody who is kind of is normal but has some issues, mental issues, emotional issues, any kind of thing like that. If they go too deep down any sort of subject, they can spiral off like this.
Oh yeah.
And I definitely saw this as sort of a metaphor for how people who are feeling alone, feeling um, like they're not loved, feeling that they don't have a community, can spiral into these further and further right leaning communities which start off like I kept calling him LBJ. I know that's not what it is, but he
I wanted
became.
to say JGL, and it's like it's not Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
It's not Lyndon B. Johnson either. But yeah, the guy, he welcomes her. He's open to her. He plays along with her fantasies, and obviously, he is also kind of delusional in and of himself in a way. And in this movie, he's pulling her deeper and deeper into the psychosis of this is a real thing that's happening to me, at least to some level. And I also saw the parallels between people doing that politically. And I just thought that was really interesting because I didn't expect to go into it pulling that from it. Because normally I'm able to go into a movie and being like, hey, yeah, whatever, politics doesn't matter. Um, but this being on the internet, being so ingrained in the internet, that was something really unique about it that I found really fascinating. And I kind of hope other people look into it like that as well a little bit. And kind of, I'd love to see some like essays or video essays about that
I think
element
it's
of it.
inevitable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I want to see those really bad, but I just thought that was a
I
really
don't think this film
fascinating
has
thing
hit
about it.
mainstream yet, but like
No,
I don't know. All it takes is the right person to make the right video, and it's gonna explode.
right. Maybe I will. I don't know. Um, but yeah, so that was just kind of my final thought about like what this movie kind of was representing beyond just the creepy pasta, beyond just the
Sure.
predatory nature. I really think like this encapsulates every aspect of the internet. And if you've been on the internet for any amount of time, you can really connect to some element of this and pull stuff from it, which is really, really fascinating. So I think just this is the internet movie. And if you want a movie, it's not a feel good movie. It's not a movie you're going to
Oh
watch.
no.
It's
No,
not
no,
a
no, no,
movie.
no. It's a dementor of a movie.
Yeah, this is not a movie you're going to walk out and be like, that was a good time. Um, I watched it with my AirPods in on my phone eating Five Guys um, for part of it. And that was a whiplash was what that
uh
was. Um, but yeah, so anyone who watches this movie, I know we don't have any viewers. Hello to LEB, by the way, who joined us about almost an hour ago.
Oh, I'm
And
very
then,
much intending on sharing this around though, because I
yeah,
feel like this whole conversation is honestly, outside of the director herself, probably the most meaningful conversation that the internet has had about this film. And I'm being serious. It's like there's not a lot to talk
I
about
hope
this movie
so.
yet.
Yeah, but I definitely recommend it to anyone who has spent time on the internet. And it's not a horror movie. It really is. It's horror in genre. Like you can categorize it as yes, there are
Uh-huh.
twisted, demented things that you see in this movie, but there's no gore. There's
No,
no supernatural elements.
I would
There's
definitely classify it as psychological horror. It is like raw
yes,
psychological horror.
yeah, but it definitely is. There's like so if you're not a horror fan because you don't like blood and violence, there's none of that. The most you get is like little
There's some blood. There's a little
there's
tiny bit of
yeah,
blood.
she clips her finger and drops some blood onto her laptop to start the ritual. Um, and then she does rip apart a stuffed lemur.
Which legitimately is like disturbing. I'm
It,
not even
yeah,
kidding.
no, it's not a fun watch.
In the context of the movie, it wrecked me.
Yeah, this this movie is not fun. It's not a movie that you can like put on with the boys.
You
And
know what? I'm not even lying to you. I honestly think it kind of put me into a little bit of a mental funk.
yeah, I remember I watched it and then I went to work,
Oh God. Right, right.
which was not a great experience to be completely honest.
I mean, I'm coming out of that funk, but like, yeah, I actually did kind of like now that I'm thinking about it, I did have a rough couple mental health weeks.
Hmm.
Jesus.
Like this movie stuck with me, I think, more than any other movie this year, except Bones and All. But fuck Bones and All. I know it's in your top 10.
Dude, we need to do a podcast on Bones and All,
I would
motherfucker.
I would love to. I'm so in because I hate that movie so much, and I have so much to say about it.
And I love it.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good dichotomy. But like this movie really stuck out to me, and I recommend it to anyone who has a presence on the internet. Genuinely.
All right, and with that, PerGron, thank you so much. This has genuinely been I was riveted just having this conversation, man.
This was a good
I've
conversation.
thought about people from my past that I haven't thought about in literal decades. I mean, Jesus Christ. Okay, well, yeah, thanks to everyone who does watch this. I do very much I don't often promote my own stuff, but this is one of those rare exceptions where I am going to legitimately try and make a case to get as many people as possible to watch this, because I think we hit on some really captivating internet culture talk here. All right.
Yeah,
Well, thanks
I really
once
enjoyed
again,
it.
PerGron.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm gonna just real quick plug
Sure.
we don't upload it on it anymore, but more Poo Talk still exists. So
Oh
you
my
should go watch.
God.
You should go rewatch those, because we're gonna be not at all, but we're gonna pretend that we're gonna reboot it to compete against you guys.
Oh my God. You totally just should. You should.
I might see if Jokers is down to just do it.
All right, everyone. Have a good night.